You shouldn't pay $200 an hour for a Salesforce expert like myself to read a simple Salesforce error message for you and then tell you what it means. It's also super helpful to understand how to read them if you're a CTO, a CRO, or a RevOps manager, so you know how to properly react to it as well. Because two things happen when you get these error messages. One is, I don't know how to read it, so I don't know if this is a big problem or not. And then two, is this something that I need to escalate right away, or is this something that we can kind of ignore and get to a little bit later? So what I'm referring to here is, of course, this screenshot. You've likely seen these if you're signed up to get them. Most of the time they go to like your Salesforce team and sometimes like the operation managers. But you can sign up to get these error messages if you want to start getting them, if you're not already. And it will just basically tell you anytime that there's some type of error that happens in Salesforce, what happened, how you can fix it, and whether or not that's a problem for you in your business. So the way I want to divide this up is by 3 sections here, and I'll break down what each section means so that you know how to take a look at these emails and then do those 2 things. Figure out if we need to escalate or ignore, and it's just better for you to understand how you can kind of read through these and get a pulse and context for the business if you're trying to be a little more hands-on. So let's start with number 1, which is going to be our red section here. You're going to have this first part tell you what is broken. So this is either going to be an all caps error code, and you'll see something like field custom validation exception or required field missing. Or in our case down here, this is going to be an error message for an automation or a flow inside of Salesforce. So this is going to tell us something a little bit different around that automation. So the flow element, the trigger, the action, it's going to tell me the type of problem that happened in here. And number 2 is a little bit more of the meaty section for this one. This is going to tell us where it broke. So this will be like the object, like your account, opportunity, lead, contact, or it'll be the record specifically. So if you have a contact set up as Jordan Nelson, it'll tell you that that record specifically was affected. And then in our case here, we're also going to see the flow that this hit. And then number 3, we're going to also see down here why it broke. Now, if this is going to be something like these 2 up here where you have an all caps error message, you're likely going to see in number 3 at the error message that it also kicks out for you. So sometimes you can scroll all the way down to number 3 and just try to look at that first to give you an indicator of what's going on. But this will tell you the rule, the decision path, the trigger that fired. And then if Salesforce gives you one, sometimes they have a custom message there. That's usually the fix that you got to put into place. So in our example, if we look at this, right, I'm looking at number 1. If I looked at this myself, places I'm going to glance that are going to tell me what's going on. If I don't even know how to read this and I'm just looking at words, things that I would start doing to teach myself and things that I did when I became a Salesforce admin for the first time, I would start to pay attention to things I noticed that would be patterns. So if I saw something come through with this person's name, which is going to be flow application, I would know that automatically this is a flow error and this is an automation type of issue that we're having. So that's one thing you can look for. The other one would be this button that says open flow. So I know that this is linked to another automation. I can also see debug this flow. So I'm looking for kind of anywhere in here that says something to do with flow. And when I see the word flow, I know this is an automation issue that we're having right away. I also see flow here in the bolded header. So those are kind of some quick things I would look at. Now, if I read this header, the header will tell me exactly an error occurred with your, and then in quotes, this is going to be the name of the automation of what we called it inside of Salesforce. So it happened with ours personally. It's going to be called the send CSAT reminders flow or send CSAT reminders automation. So we're having an issue with that. So if only I knew how to read that one line and I knew that this is going to tell me in quotes the name of the automation and that flow means automation in Salesforce, now I can kind of start to think through in my head whether or not this is a big deal or not, if I have some context to the business. Depending on where you sit, maybe you don't. But if you're like, let's say a RevOps manager or an operations manager, you probably have context to what these automations are. You might not know them in and out, but right off the bat, if this is sending CSAT reminders, I know for my business, this is pretty low risk if we have an error here. This usually happens when we're missing an email. And that's exactly what happened in this one that will break down how I know that. But it is really low risk. I don't really have to panic. I know this is kind of an ignore type of feel for me. Good, better, best. We got some technical debt here. Probably can make this automation a little bit better. probably could require to make sure that all emails are filled out on all of our contacts, some stuff like that. But nothing really crazy is happening here since I'm not too reliant on making sure every single CSAT goes out with these reminders to our contacts. So I know now that I can kind of calm down and I don't have to be so worried or anxious about this. So this is a really good section to just kind of glance at if you do nothing else. This one is also going to tell us, because it's a flow error here, some type of error message up in the first section. Like I said, some of them will actually put it down in number 3 for you if it's a different type of error that you could scroll all the way to the bottom and look for. In this section here, though, you can see you'll get familiar with the language as you read more and more of these, or as you Google more and more of these like I have over the years. But I would know that as soon as I see 0 recipients in this part of the keywords, that I know that this is going to be due to an email not having an email address. So in other words, I tried to send this to a contact that we had in Salesforce, and we're likely missing an email address. So when it tried to send it, it's telling me there were zero recipients, meaning we didn't have an email, so we couldn't send this out. So now I know what pretty much all the issue is. There's a send CSAT reminders automation. It didn't find an email and it couldn't send it. Okay, so now if I want to dig into this a little bit further to see how big of an issue that is to me, I can move on to number 2 here. And number 2 is a reminder. This is going to tell me where it broke. So I'm not going to go all the way through every single one of these with you, but I'll tell you again where I would start to glance. Now, if I'm a consultant, I'm going to probably look here first at this org because I want to know what Salesforce environment this affected. If we're managing several different Salesforce environments, then obviously I want to know what client this affected. So this affected the Simply Scale one, which is our own personal one. So I know this is my own business that this affected. This wasn't a client's. I also know that this is an active flow, and I also know what version of the flow is. I'm not usually too worried about the version. I'm not usually too worried about the status because obviously this got fired off. If I check this a few days later, maybe I would want to know some more of that information as I'm trying to see if anybody fixed it in the last couple of days. But it will tell me a little bit of information about that automation. Again, the name, what type of automation this is. Won't go into the weeds on this, but there's different types of automations you can fire off. This one happens to be an auto-launched one. So I get some quick information there. I know that this is my own. You do some troubleshooting. If I were to be the one actually fixing this, you're likely not going to be that person, but it will tell you what user was affected or triggered this, when it happened, the date, the time, as well as some specific record IDs in here that we could look for. This is also going to tell us down here too, what record this was affected by. So I can pull in these record IDs. If you've never done that, I should have had a Salesforce one pulled up for you. You can throw those in your URL though, and it'll bring you right to the record. So you could take a look at that if you'd like to. But basically you'll have your URL up top. If you're logged into Salesforce, you're going to delete everything after the salesforce.com part. And then you're just going to paste this in after that last slash. And this will bring you right to that record type. And then number 3 down here, this one is going to tell us why it broke. So the rule, the decision path, the trigger that fired. If Salesforce gave you a custom message, then great. It'll tell you pretty much what you got to fix, just like I showed you up here. I know that that language 0 recipients means there's no email. Sometimes it's stored down here in number 3. So that's how you're going to look through these things. I have that a little more in detail in our newsletter that we sent out this week that you can also read through too. Sign up. This is also free if this is interesting to you to get tips like this. But that's really it. This is really helpful to just make it to where you don't have to do any more guessing when you're in this seat as the RevOps manager, operations manager, CTO, CRO, because now I can just quickly glance at this stuff and have a pulse on what's happening. This also helps you prioritize, if you do nothing else, how much tech debt you guys really have. If you get a lot of this, then, hey, I know that we need to start prioritizing some of our tech debt tickets because I get a lot of these error messages. We probably need better practices there so that we quit receiving those or solve them altogether. Or, these never really happen. And what's happening in this situation, because I haven't seen one of these come through in the last couple of months, what happened to trigger this one? Is there something else that we need to be concerned with? So it helps you just have a better pulse on what's happening inside your Salesforce environment too. So this is a really cool way to do it. Like I say, you shouldn't have to feel like you have to pull in your Salesforce team or a consultant specifically to look at this. I hope this helps you be able to read these moving forward. But I would say best practice, usually try to focus a lot of your time into this first section And what I did in the early days was start just trying to Google these things or GPT search them, Claude search them, and understand what these error messages mean so that you can start just kind of glancing at these emails as you'd like to and know if it's a problem or not a problem. Now, if you do not have a team, and I'm saying all this and you're saying, well, this would be great if we just had a team that was available for us all the time to be able to just take care of this stuff for us, you can click the link below. I do have a link there that will send you over to see if we're a good fit for you. We only work with tech companies, and we only work with tech companies that are at least making $3 million in revenue. If that is you and you don't have a Salesforce team and you'd like to work with us, that'll tell you everything that you need to know about how we can partner up with you. Looking forward to speaking with you soon if that is you. Thanks.